During my vasectomy procedure, I overheard my surgeon talking to a nurse. Is his wife still in the waiting room? Yes, doctor. Good. After we finish, I need you to give her this envelope. Don't let him see it. My blood ran cold. I pretended to still be under anesthesia. 30 minutes later, I saw what was in the envelope. I packed and left the town. Chapter 1, The Perfect Life. Gordon Quinn had built his life brick by brick the way his father taught him. At 38, he owned Quinn Construction, a mid-size firm that specialized in commercial renovations. The company wasn't flashy, but it was solid. 15 full-time employees, contracts booked 6 months out, a reputation for finishing ahead of schedule. He'd met Camille Hutchkins 7 years ago at a charity gala his company sponsored. She was 26 then, working as an events coordinator. Beautiful in that effortless way that made men stupid. Gordon wasn't typically stupid, but he'd been lonely after his mother's death, and Camille filled spaces in his life he hadn't known were empty. They married within a year. Their daughter Sophie came 2 years later, 5 years old now. With Camille's dark hair and what Gordon believed was gray eyes. But lately, the foundation he'd built felt unstable. Camille had grown distant, always on her phone, taking calls in other rooms. When he asked about it, she blamed stress from her new position as director of events at the Grandview Hotel. He wanted to believe her. The vasectomy was her idea. Gordon, we have Sophie. She's perfect. Why risk another pregnancy at my age? Camille had said it so reasonably, her hand on his arm. Besides, you said yourself you wanted to focus on expanding the business. He'd agreed, though something in her urgency bothered him, but he pushed the feeling aside. Gordon Quinn was a problem solver, not a worrier. Dr. Victor Pugh came highly recommended. The consultation was brief but professional. Hugh was in his mid-40s, confident in that way surgeons often are, with steel gray hair and hands that moved with practiced precision. Simple procedure, Mr. Quinn. You'll be in and out in under an hour, Pugh had said, barely making eye contact as he reviewed the consent forms. The morning of the procedure, Camille drove him to the clinic. She seemed nervous, checking her phone repeatedly in the waiting room. You okay? We're nasted about you. She kissed his forehead, but her eyes darted toward the hallway where Dr. Pugh had just disappeared. The anesthesia came through and for Gordon felt the familiar drift of consciousness sliding away as the surgical nurse, a young woman with tired eyes, adjusted the monitors above him. Count backward from 10, Mr. Quinn, she instructed. 10:98 then nothing until the voices pulled him back to the surface. Chapter 2. The Conversation. Gordon's mind floated in that strange space between consciousness and sleep. He could hear voices but couldn't open his eyes. Couldn't move. The anesthesia held him suspended. Is his wife still in the waiting room? Dr. Pugh's voice low and tense. Yes, doctor. The nurse. She sounded uncertain. Good. After we finish, I need you to give her this envelope. Don't let him see it. She knows it's coming. Gordon's heart rate spiked, but the monitors didn't alarm. The drugs in his system kept his body still even as his mind screamed to full alertness. He focused on keeping his breathing steady, his eyes closed. Doctor, I'm not comfortable, the nurse started. You're paid to assist, not to have opinions. Give her the envelope when he's in recovery. She'll be alone in the consultation room. Understood. A pause. Yes, doctor. Gordon heard paper rustling, then footsteps moving away. He forced himself to remain motionless as the procedure continued. His mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. What was in that envelope? Why did Camille know it was coming? How long had they been planning this? 30 minutes later, they wheeled him into recovery. He kept his eyes mostly closed, watching through slitted lids as the nurse. Her name tag read Torres moved nervously around the room. She kept glancing at the door at the envelope partially visible in her scrub pocket. Camille appeared in the doorway. Can I see him? He's still coming out of it. Nurse Torres said. Dr. Pugh wanted to speak with you first. Consultation room 2 down the hall. Perfect. Gordon thought they think I'm still unconscious. As soon as Camille left, Gordon forced his eyes open wider. Water, he croaked. Nurse Torres jumped. Mr. Quinn, you're awake earlier than expected. Bathroom. He managed, sitting up carefully. His head spun genuinely from the anesthesia, but his mind was razor sharp. Let me help you. I got it. He stood steadier than he should have been and shuffled toward the small bathroom connected to the recovery room. Once inside, he locked the door and moved quickly to the small window that overlooked the hallway. From this angle, he could see directly into consultation room 2 through its interior window. Camille sat across from Dr. Pugh. The surgeon handed her an envelope, the same one Gordon had heard them discuss. Camille's hand trembled as she opened it. He watched her face transform. Shock, then something that looked almost like satisfaction, then tears. But they weren't tears of sadness. Gordon had been married to this woman for 6 years. He knew her tells. These were tears of relief. Dr. Pugh reached across the table, placed his hand over hers. The gesture was too familiar, too intimate. They spoke. Gordon couldn't hear the words, but he could read the body language. This wasn't a doctor comforting a patient's wife. This was something else entirely. Camille glanced toward the door, tucked the envelope into her purse, and wiped her eyes. She stood, and so did Pugh. For just a moment, their hands lingered together. Gordon moved away from the window and genuinely vomited into the toilet. The anesthesia, the betrayal, the sheer fury rising in his chest, it all combined into physical revulsion. When he emerged, pale and shaking, Nurse Torres looked concerned. "Mr. Quinn, you should sit down. Where's my wife? She just left. She said she had an emergency at work, but she'll pick you up in 2 hours when you're clear to leave." Of course she did. Gordon nodded slowly, his mind already working through the next steps. "Can I rest in here? Close the door." "Of course. I'll check on you in 30 minutes. As soon as she left, Gordon pulled out his phone. The anesthesia was wearing off fast. Maybe he'd metabolized it quicker than expected. Or maybe pure adrenaline was burning through it. He opened his Secure Notes app and began typing everything he'd seen and heard. Then he made a call. "Wayne Riddle Investigations." A gruff voice answered. "Wayne, it's Gordon. I need you to do something for me and I need absolute discretion." Wayne Riddle had been Gordon's friend since high school. After 20 years as an Army CD investigator, Wayne had opened a private investigation firm in their hometown. He was thorough, loyal, and completely trustworthy. "Name it. I need you to run a deep background check on Dr. Victor Pugh. Everything where he's worked, any complaints, his personal life, financial records if you can access them. And I need surveillance on my wife, Camille. Starting today." Silence on the other end. "Then Gordon, what's going on?" "I'll explain later." "Can you do it?" "Consider it done. I'll have preliminary info by tomorrow morning." Gordon ended the call as Nurse Torres knocked on the door. "Mr. Quinn, how are you feeling?" "Better," he said, opening the door with a weak smile. "Sorry about that. Anesthesia always hits me hard." She looked relieved. "That's normal. Rest now. Your wife will be back soon." But Gordon didn't rest. He lay on the recovery bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind assembling pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known existed until 2 hours ago. Whatever was in that envelope, it was important enough for a surgeon to risk his medical license. Important enough for Camille to abandon him immediately after his procedure. Important enough for them to meet secretly touch hands like lovers. And Gordon Quinn was going to find out exactly what it was. Chapter 3. The investigation begins. 2 days later, Gordon sat in Wayne's office above a pawn shop on 7th Street. The space was cluttered with filing cabinets, old coffee cups, and a wall covered in maps and photographs. Wayne himself looked like he'd stepped out of a detective novel. 6'2", barrel-chested, with a gray beard and perpetually suspicious eyes. "You're not going to like what I found," Wayne said, sliding a thick folder across his desk. Gordon opened it. The first page showed Dr. Victor Pugh's professional history. Hopkins Medical School residency at Mass General Board certified in urology clean record until Wayne's notes highlighted something interesting. 3 years ago Pugh worked at St. Catherine's Hospital in Boston. Wayne explained he left abruptly. "No official reason given, but I called in a favor with a friend who works hospital administration. Rumor was he was involved with a patient's wife. Hospital brass gave him the choice. Resign quietly or face an ethics investigation. And he chose to resign. Moved here, joined Riverside Medical Center, kept his nose clean publicly. Anyway," Wayne pulled out another document. "But here's where it gets interesting. He owns a condo in the Riverside Towers. Expensive place, way above what a surgeon at a mid-tier medical center should afford. I did some digging into his financials." "How did you don't ask questions you don't want answered, Gordon?" Wayne grinned. "Point is, Pugh's been receiving regular cash deposits. 5,000 here, 8,000 there. Always just under the reporting threshold. They go back about 2 years. Gordon felt his stomach tighten. 2 years. That's when Camille started her new job at the Grand View. Right. And guess where Dr. Pugh's condo is located? Let me guess. Direct view of the Grand View Hotel. Wayne nodded grimly. I've had a surveillance team on your wife for the past 48 hours. She's been to that condo 3 times. Once the day of your surgery, once yesterday afternoon, and once this morning after dropping Sophie at school. The folder contained photographs. Camille entering the Riverside Towers. Camille in the lobby. Camille entering an elevator. Timestamps showed she'd stayed between 90 minutes and 3 hours each visit. Gordon's hands clenched around the folder. They're having an affair. Looks that way. But there's more. Wayne pulled out another set of documents. Also ran a background on Camille. Did you know she grew up in Boston? Gordon looked up sharply. She told me she was from Rhode Island. She lied. Born and raised in Boston. Attended Boston College. She worked as an events coordinator for the Fairmont Copley Plaza, which is where Dr. Pugh was living during his time at St. Catherine's Hospital. The implications hit Gordon like a physical blow. They knew each other before she met me. That's my theory about a researcher pulling social media archives and old newspaper society pages. If they were seen together at any events back then, we'll find it. Gordon stood and walked to the window, looking down at the street below. A woman pushed a stroller. A man walked his dog. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that Gordon Quinn's entire existence had been revealed as a carefully constructed lie. What was an envelope? Wayne asked quietly. I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Gordon turned back to his friend. I need you to keep the surveillance going. Document everything. Where she goes, who she talks to, how long she stays. I need to know if anyone else is involved in whatever this is. Gordon, if you're thinking about doing something, I'm thinking about protecting myself and my daughter. Gordon's voice turned cold. Someone has been playing me for years, Wayne. Someone thought they could use me, and I'm going to find out why. Wayne studied him for a long moment. The Gordon Quinn I knew in high school would have charged in swinging. You've gotten smarter. I've gotten patient. There's a difference. Over the next week, Gordon played the role of recovering husband perfectly. He winced appropriately when getting up from chairs. He let Camille fuss over him with ice packs and pain medication. He smiled at Sophie and helped her with her kindergarten homework while Camille took increasingly frequent work calls in their bedroom. But every moment he was watching, cataloging, planning. He noticed Camille had started locking her phone, something she'd never done before. She'd change her laptop password. She was deleting text messages immediately after reading them. Amateur mistakes, Gordon thought. She thinks I'm too trusting to notice. On day 6, he made his move. Camille had left her purse on the kitchen counter while she showered. Gordon had maybe 7 minutes. He'd already prepared. He had ordered a small camera from Wayne's security equipment supplier. No larger than a button. Inside Camille's purse, he found her spare phone. Of course, she had a spare phone. He powered on quickly. No password on this one. Arrogant of her. And began photographing everything. Text messages to Victor. Meeting times coded language that wasn't really coded at all. Then he found the photos. Medical documents. Lab results. The header read Riverside Medical Center paternity analysis. Gordon's heart stopped. The results showed a DNA comparison between sample A, Gordon Quinn, and sample B, minor female Sophie Quinn. Probability of paternity 0%. The paper trembled in his hands. He photographed it quickly, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Sophie wasn't his daughter. 5 years of bedtime stories, scraped knees, first days of school, all built on a lie. But even through the shock and rage, a part of Gordon's mind noted something strange about the document. The dates didn't quite line up. The sample collection date for him was listed as 3 weeks ago before his vasectomy. When had they collected his DNA? He heard the shower turn off. Quickly, Gordon returned everything to Camille's purse exactly as he'd found it, powered off the spare phone, and moved to the kitchen sink to wash dishes, forcing his hands to stay steady. Camille emerged 15 minutes later, hair damp, wearing her favorite silk robe. She smiled at him, that same smile that had once made him feel like the luckiest man alive. Feeling better today? She asked, kissing his cheek. Much better, Gordon replied, returning her smile. Actually, I was thinking we should do something special this weekend. Just the 3 of us. Maybe that new Italian place Sophie's been asking about. Camille's smile faltered almost imperceptibly. This weekend, I actually have a work event, the mayor's charity gala. You know how important it is. Of course, maybe next weekend then. Definitely. She squeezed his arm and moved past him to grab her purse. Gordon watched her check to make sure everything was in place. Satisfied, she headed upstairs. Gordon pulled out his phone and texted Wayne. Found the envelope contents. We need to meet tonight. The response came immediately. I have news to 8 p.m. my office. Chapter 4. Connections. Wayne's office was dark except for the desk lamp when Gordon arrived at 8 p.m. His friend had spread documents across every available surface. A spider web of connections that made Gordon's head spin. Before you tell me what you found, look at this, Wayne said, pointing to a blown-up photograph on his wall. It showed a charity event from 7 years ago in Boston. In the background, barely visible, a younger Camille Hutchkins stood next to Dr. Victor Pugh. They were at a hospital fundraiser for St. Catherine's. They knew each other, Gordon said flatly. In Boston before any of this knew each other, Gordon, they were engaged. The room tilted. What? Wayne pulled out a newspaper clipping from the Boston Globe Society pages dated 8 years ago. The headline read, Boston socialite Camille Hutchkins announces engagement to Dr. Victor Pugh. There was a photo. Camille, younger and radiant, holding up her left hand to show an engagement ring. Pugh stood beside her, looking possessive and proud. What happened? Gordon's voice came out strangled. From what I can piece together from old social media posts and friends of friends, the engagement fell apart about 6 months after this announcement. He was already married to a woman named Julia Pugh. He'd been having an affair with Camille, promised to leave his wife, but never did. Camille found out when Julia showed up at her apartment. Wayne pulled up more documents. Julia filed for divorce shortly after. It got ugly. She took him to the cleaners, got the house, half his pension, substantial alimony. That's why Pugh is living in a condo instead of some mansion. The divorce decimated him financially, and Camille disappeared from Boston society. Changed her social media to private, stopped showing up at events. About 6 months later, she resurfaced in Providence, Rhode Island, working at a different hotel. That's the version of her history she sold you. Gordon sank into a chair. Then she moved here to my city. Found me. Gordon, I don't think she found you randomly. Look at this. Wayne spread out more documents, property records, business filings. When did you meet Camille? 7 years ago. At the Children's Hospital charity gala my company sponsored. Right now, look at who planned that event. Wayne slid over an invoice. The event's coordinator listed was Camille Hutchkins, contracted through the Grand View Hotel's event planning service. She just started the Grand View, Gordon said slowly. She told me it was her first big event in a new city, that she was nervous about making a good impression. Now look at when Pugh moved to this city and joined Riverside Medical Center. Gordon checked the dates. 7 years and 2 months ago, just before Camille had arrived, they planned this, Gordon whispered. From the beginning. They moved here together. She took a job that would put her in contact with wealthy men, and she targeted me specifically. Quinn Construction was featured in the business section 2 months before that gala. Wayne said, article about your company winning the contract to renovate the old courthouse. It mentioned you were single, 31 years old, and had just inherited the company after your father's death. You were vulnerable and wealthy. Perfect mark. The pieces snapped together with horrifying clarity. The whirlwind romance, Camille's eagerness to get married, the pregnancy that came so quickly. Sophie, Gordon said suddenly. The paternity test. Wayne, when was she born? Wayne checked his files. July 15th, 6 years ago. You got married in November, 7 years ago. Gordon did the math. Which means Camille would have gotten pregnant in October, barely a month after we met, where she was already pregnant when she met you. The rage that swept through Gordon was cold and calculating. Show me what else you found. Wayne laid it out piece by piece. Financial records showing Camille had been systematically taking money from their joint account. Small amounts never enough to trigger Gordon's attention, but over 5 years it added up to nearly $200,000. Records of the Riverside Towers condo in Pugh's name. But with Camille listed as an authorized guest with her own key card dated back 3 years, she's been living a double life, Gordon said, playing wife and mother in my house while maintaining a relationship with Pugh. But why go through all this? Why not just divorce me? That's where it gets really interesting. Wayne pulled out the final set of documents. Your life insurance policy. You updated it 2 years ago. Remember after Sophie was born and you wanted to make sure she was protected. Gordon remembered $2 million with Camille as the sole beneficiary if something happened to him. Sophie would inherit when she turned 25, but until then, Camille would control everything. They're waiting for me to die, Gordon said slowly. But I'm healthy. I could live another 40 years. Unless something happened to you. An accident, maybe. Construction sites are dangerous places. Wayne's voice was grim. I'm not saying they're actively planning to kill you, but with that life insurance policy and the way they've positioned everything. They've been setting up their exit strategy. Gordon stood and paced the small office, the vasectomy. Camille insisted on it. Why? Maybe to make sure there'd be no more children. No additional claims on the estate. But Gordon was thinking about the paternity test, the dates that didn't line up. Wayne, I need you to do something for me. Can you get access to medical records? Depends whose records and how legal you want it to be. Not very legal. I need to know if Dr. Pugh has been treating me as a patient before the vasectomy. I need to know what procedures I've had at Riverside Medical Center. We made a note. I'll see what I can do. Might take a few days. I also need you to find Julia Pugh, the ex-wife. I want to talk to her. Why? Because if anyone knows how Victor Pugh operates, it's the woman he betrayed. And I'm betting she'd love to help take him down. Wayne grinned, showing teeth. Now you're thinking like a predator instead of prey. I'll find her. Gordon gathered up the photographs and documents. Wayne had prepared for him. Keep the surveillance going. I need to know every move they make. And Wayne, yeah, whatever happens next, it has to look natural, legal if possible. But either way, they can't know I'm onto them until I'm ready. You're planning something. I'm planning everything. Chapter 5. The trap takes shape. 3 days later, Gordon sat in a coffee shop in Newton, Massachusetts, across from Julia Pugh. She was 49, attractive in a weary way with platinum blonde hair and eyes that had seen too much disappointment. Thank you for meeting me, Mrs. Pugh. It's Miss Morrison now. I took back my maiden name. She sipped her latte, studying him. Your investigator friend said you had questions about Victor. I assume he's done something terrible. You could say that. Gordon slid a photo across the table. Camille and Victor entering the Riverside Towers together. Timestamp from last week. Julia's expression hardened. Camille Hutchkins. I should have known she'd resurface eventually. She's like a bad penny. You know her? Know her? She destroyed my marriage. Julia's laugh was bitter. Though I suppose Victor did most of that himself. Camille was just the catalyst. Young, beautiful, ambitious. Victor was at the peak of his career. Department head at St. Catherine's, making excellent money. She saw a meal ticket. What happened? Julia settled back in her chair. They met at a hospital fundraiser. Victor was immediately smitten, or maybe just lustful. He started an affair, told her he'd leave me, that we'd get divorced, and he'd marry her. Bought her a ring, made it all public before he even told me he wanted out. Then I found out from a reporter calling to congratulate me on my husband's engagement to someone else. Can you imagine? Julia's smile was sharp as glass. I went to Camille's apartment, told her exactly what kind of man Victor was, showed her our joint bank statements, the mortgage on our house that he'd never mentioned, our daughter's college fund that he'd been raiding for gifts to his mistress. Gordon leaned forward. What did she do? Broke off the engagement immediately. Victor was furious. He'd already announced it publicly, and when it fell apart, it damaged his reputation at the hospital. The administration started asking questions about his conduct. He had to resign before they opened a formal investigation. And you divorced him? Oh, I'm more than divorced him. I took everything. The house, his pension, hefty alimony. I wanted him to suffer the way he made me suffer. Julia met Gordon's eyes. But here's what you need to understand about Victor Pugh. He never forgives ever. In his mind, Camille and I conspired to destroy him. He blamed us both equally for losing his position, his reputation, his money. So, he'd want revenge on Camille. Unless, Julia paused, thinking, unless they reconciled. Unless they decided their real enemy was everyone who'd kept them apart. Mr. Quinn, why are you really here? Gordon told her everything. The overheard conversation during surgery, the secret envelope, the paternity test showing Sophie wasn't his daughter. The 7 years of lies built on lies. When he finished, Julia was silent for a long moment. They're playing the long game, she said. Finally. Victor is patient when he wants to be. And if Camille helped him plan this, she pulled out her phone. May I see that paternity test? Gordon showed her the photograph he'd taken. Julia studied it carefully, then started laughing, a harsh knowing sound. What? Gordon asked. This is fake. Or rather, it's been tampered with. Look at the header formatting. See how the font is slightly different for the body text and the signature line at the bottom? That's not how Riverside Medical Center formats their genetic testing reports. I know because our daughter had testing done there for a medical condition last year. Gordon felt his pulse quicken. You're saying Sophie might actually be mine? I'm saying Victor is capable of falsifying medical documents. He's done it before. That's part of why he had to leave Boston. A patient complained that Victor had altered their biopsy report to show cancer when there wasn't any, just to push them toward an expensive treatment protocol. We settled out of court. The world shifted again. If the paternity test is fake, then why create it all? Julia's expression turned calculating. Think about it. What does that document do psychologically? It makes you question everything about your marriage, your child, your life. It breaks your trust. And broken men make mistakes. They want me unstable. They want you dead, Mr. Quinn. Or at least legally vulnerable. A man who discovers his child isn't his biological daughter, who's been betrayed by his wife for years. That man might do something rash, might confront his wife violently, might have an accident at work while distracted by emotional turmoil. Gordon felt ice in his veins. They're engineering circumstances where my death would seem natural or at least understandable. And with you gone, Camille inherits everything. She and Victor finally get their happy ending financed by your life insurance policy. Julia leaned across the table. But there's something you don't know about my ex-husband. Victor keeps records, obsessive, detailed records. When we divorced, my lawyer subpoenaed his home office. We found journals going back decades. Every affair, every scheme, every person he felt had wronged him. It's how he thinks, how he plans. Do you still have copies? My lawyer kept everything. I can get them to you. Julia's smile was vindictive. Victor Pugh destroyed my family. If you're planning to take him down, Mr. Quinn, I want to help. They exchanged information. Julia promised to courier the divorce records and journal copies within 2 days. Gordon promised to keep her updated on his plans. As they parted ways, Julia caught his arm. One more thing. Victor mentioned Camille had a sister, younger, more practical. I never met her, but Victor said the sister had warned Camille about him. Try to talk her out of the affair. Family name was Hutchkins. Do you remember the sister's name? Melody. Melody Hutchkins. Gordon made a note. Another thread to pull. Driving back, he called Wayne. I need you to locate someone named Melody Hutchkins, sister to Camille, and I need to know if there's any connection between her and what's happening on it. Also, I got into Pugh's medical record system. Gordon, you need to see this. What did you find? You've been his patient longer than you think. Come to the office now. Chapter 6, The Revelation. Wayne had his murder board fully deployed when Gordon arrived. Red string connected photographs, documents, and timeline markers. At the center was a medical chart. Gordon Quinn, patient of Riverside Medical Center, Wayne said, tapping the chart. You've had appointments there you don't remember. 3 years ago, you came in for what you thought was a routine physical for insurance policy renewal. Remember that Gordon did. The company was expanding and he needed updated coverage. It was standard blood work, EKG, the usual, right? Except your blood work was processed by the hospital's lab. And the doctor who signed off on it was Victor Pugh. He wasn't your primary care physician, but he had access to your samples. He kept my DNA better than that. He's been tracking your health. Look at this. Wayne pulled up a series of medical reports. 2 years ago, you had what you thought was a stomach flu. You went to Riverside's ER. Pugh wasn't the attending, but he put himself on the consulting rotation for your case. Ordered additional tests you weren't told about. Gordon scanned the reports, comprehensive metabolic panel, hormone levels, genetic markers for hereditary diseases. He was checking to see if you had any conditions that might kill you naturally, Gordon said slowly. Building a medical history, and when you didn't have anything conveniently fatal, they had to get creative. Wayne pulled out the final document, the Vasectomy. Look at the operative report. Q noted complications, bleeding that required additional surgical intervention. Except you didn't have complications, did you? No, I recovered perfectly. Barely any pain after the first day. That's because there were no complications. But now there's a medical record saying there were. And that record includes a liability waiver you signed. If anything goes wrong with your urological health in the future, infection, damage, even cancer in that region, it's all attributed to surgical complications from a procedure you technically consented to. The implications hit Gordon like a hammer. They're documenting a reason for me to die. Building a paper trail that makes it look natural or makes it look like medical malpractice. That's Pugh's fault, which gets Camille off the hook entirely. She's the grieving widow who lost her husband to a botched surgery. She sues the hospital, gets a settlement on top of your life insurance. She and Pugh wait a respectable amount of time, then reconnect after their shared trauma. Gordon pays the small office, his mind working through scenarios. They've been planning this for years. The marriage, Sophie, moving here, all of it was about positioning themselves for this endgame. There's one more thing. Wayne pulled out a financial record. Remember those cash deposits to Pugh? I traced them. They're coming from an offshore account owned by a shell corporation. And that corporation's registration lists 2 officers, Victor Pugh and Melody Kaufman. Kaufman Julia said Camille's sister was named Melody Hutchkins. Melody Hutchkins married Lloyd Kaufman 6 years ago. They live 2 hours from here. She works as a forensic accountant. Wayne's expression was grim. Gordon, Camille's sister, is helping them. She's been laundering money, setting up shell corporations. This isn't just an affair and a fake paternity test. This is an organized professional con. Gordon felt the last pieces clicking into place. 3 of them, Hugh, Camille, and Melody. They're running a long con on me, and I'm the mark who's supposed to end up dead or in jail or financially ruined. Any outcome where they get your money works for them. Gordon stood silent for a long moment, staring at the murder board. Then he smiled cold and predatory. Then we give them what they want. Wayne raised an eyebrow. Explain. They think I'm a trusting fool. A good man who built a successful business through hard work and honest dealing. They think I'll react emotionally, make mistakes, play into their hands. Gordon turned to his friend. So that's exactly what I'll do. On the surface, you're going to let them think their plan is working. Better than that, I'm going to help them spring their trap, and when they do, we'll be ready with a trap of our own. Gordon pulled out his phone and opened a notes app. Here's what we're going to do. First, I need you to find me the best forensic document examiner in the state. I want that paternity test analyzed and certified as fraudulent. Done. Second, I need evidence of the shell corporation and money laundering. Can you get documentation that will hold up in court? I can get it, but it'll cost. We'll need to hire a specialist to trace the funds properly. Do it. Money isn't an issue. Third, I need leverage on Melody Kaufman. If she's the accountant running their financial schemes, she's the weak link. Find out everything about her marriage, her life, what matters to her. Wayne made notes. What about Camille and Pugh? You're just going to let them keep playing you. For now, I need them to feel confident to believe I suspect nothing. That means I go home tonight, kiss my wife, read Sophie a bedtime story, and pretend everything is normal. Gordon's jaw tightened and I document everything. Every lie, every absence, every moment of this betrayal, because when this goes to court, and it will go to court, I want the evidence to be overwhelming. What's the endgame here, Gordon? You want them arrested? Sued? What? Gordon looked at his friend, his expression hardening into something Wayne had never seen before. Cold calculation mixed with righteous fury. I want them destroyed completely. I want Pugh to lose his medical license, his freedom, everything. I want Camille to lose Sophie, lose any claim to my money, lose her freedom, too, if possible. I want Melody's forensic accounting career over. I want everyone who helped them to face consequences. That's ambitious. They try to make me a victim. They made a mistake. Gordon gathered his jacket. I'm going home. Keep digging. Find me everything. And Wayne. Yeah. Thank you for believing me, for helping me. Wayne gripped his shoulder. That's what friends do. Now go play your part. Be the unsuspecting husband and let them dig their own graves. Chapter 7. The confrontation. 2 weeks later, Gordon had everything in place. The forensic document examiner had certified the paternity test as fraudulent. The DNA data had been manipulated. The hospital headers forged. A real paternity test conducted secretly through Wayne's connections confirmed what Gordon had known in his heart. Sophie was his daughter. His actual daughter. The financial crime specialist had traced the Shell Corporation money trail. Melody Kaufman had been setting up the infrastructure for 3 years, moving money between accounts, creating paper trails that would have eventually framed Gordon for tax evasion or fraud. The plan was elegant. When Gordon died or went to prison, Camille would claim ignorance, take his assets, and disappear with her sister and Pugh. But now it was time to flip the script. Gordon had called Camille that morning from his office. Hey, I need to work late tonight. Big client meeting about the hospital renovation project. Don't wait up. She'd been too eager in her response. No problem. Sophie and I will have a girls' night. But Wayne's surveillance showed the truth. Within an hour of that call, Camille had texted Victor. Then she dropped Sophie at her friend's house for a sleepover, arranged last minute, and driven to Riverside Towers. Perfect. Gordon sat in Wayne's van, parked across from the towers, watching the video feed from the cameras Wayne had installed in Pugh's condo 2 days ago. Getting access had required bribing a maintenance worker and some creative lockpicking, but the results were worth it. On screen, Camille paced Pugh's living room. I don't understand why we can't just move forward. It's been 7 years, Victor. 7 years of playing housewife to a man I don't love. Patience, darling. Pugh handed her a glass of wine. We're almost there. The medical records are in place. All we need is the right moment. What kind of moment? An accident? Something plausible. Construction sites are dangerous. A fall, faulty equipment, anything that could be attributed to those surgical complications I documented. Pugh smiled. His own company's insurance will pay out in addition to the life insurance. It's perfect. Camille drank deeply. And you're sure it'll work? Gordon isn't stupid. Gordon is exactly stupid enough. He trusts you. He trusts doctors. He trusts the system. Up we're close. After all these years, we'll finally have what we deserve. The house, the money, everything. We'll sell Quinn Construction to one of his competitors. Take the cash and start fresh somewhere warm. What about Sophie? Gordon's hands clenched as he waited for the answer. What about her? Pugh's voice was cold. She's not my daughter. Send her to boarding school. Set up a trust. Whatever keeps her out of our way. She's just collateral damage. On the screen, Camille hesitated for just a moment before nodding. You're right. We've come too far to get sentimental. Wayne glanced to Gordon. You okay? I'm better than okay. I'm getting all of this on record. Gordon checked his recording equipment. Everything was crystal clear. Video and audio perfectly admissible in court. Is Detective Lester in position? Thomas Lester is standing by with a warrant. Wayne confirmed he's been following this case since I briefed him last week. He's very interested in medical fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. Gordon pulled out his phone. Then let's end this. He dialed Camille's number on screen. She jumped as her phone rang, then checked the caller ID and frowned. Gordon, I thought you were in a meeting. Meeting ended early. Where are you? I stopped by the house and you're not there. You could see her mind racing on camera, calculating her lie. Oh, I ran out for groceries. The store was packed. I'll be home soon. Which store? What? Which store, Camille? I'll meet you there. We can grab dinner while we're out. Panic flashed across her face. You know what? I'm actually just leaving. I'll see you at home. Love you. She hung up quickly on screen. She turned to Pugh. He's asking questions. He knows something. He can't know anything. We've been careful, but even Pugh looked worried. Gordon smiled coldly. Wayne, make the call. Wayne dialed Detective Lester. They're both in the condo discussing murder for hire and insurance fraud. We have it all on tape. Move in. Within minutes, police cars surrounded Riverside Towers. Gordon and Wayne walked into the building lobby, showing their credentials to the officers securing the entrance. Detective Thomas Lester met them at the elevator. He was in his 50s with sharp eyes and a reputation for hating dirty doctors. Mr. Quinn, your investigator has provided us with very interesting evidence. We've got warrants for Dr. Pugh's arrest on fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and medical malpractice. We also have a warrant for your wife on conspiracy charges. Do you have enough to make it stick? Between the recordings, the financial records, the falsified documents, and the testimony we'll get from Julia Morrison and others. Yes, we have enough. Lester checked his watch. Time to go ruin some people's night. They rode the elevator to Pugh's floor. The moment felt surreal. Gordon had imagined this moment for weeks, but the reality was somehow both more satisfying and more painful than he'd anticipated. Four officers flanked Lester as he knocked on Pugh's door. Dr. Pugh, this is the police. Open the door. Silence, then frantic whispers inside. Finally, the door opened. Pugh stood there trying to look calm. Officers, what's this about? Dr. Victor Pugh, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and falsifying medical documents. Lester moved forward with handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. Camille appeared behind Pugh, her face white, then she saw Gordon standing in the hallway, and her expression transformed. First to shock, then to understanding, then to rage. You knew, she spat. You knew the whole time. Not the whole time, Gordon said calmly. But long enough. Long enough to watch you. Long enough to gather evidence. Long enough to make absolutely sure you'd spend the next decade in prison. You bastard. Mrs. Quinn, you're under arrest as well. Another officer moved forward with handcuffs. Conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, money laundering, and accessory to medical malpractice. As they cuffed her, Camille stared at Gordon with pure hatred. Sophie is my daughter. My actual daughter. The paternity test was fake. Remember? Oh, wait. You knew that. Gordon's voice was ice. You try to make me think my own child wasn't mine. You know what that makes you? Not just a criminal, a monster. Gordon, please. Now she was crying, the mask slipping. I love you. I never meant. Save it for the judge. Gordon turned to Detective Lester. There's a third conspirator, Melody Kaufman, Camille's sister, the forensic accountant who set up their shell corporations. Already being picked up as we speak, Lester confirmed. We have officers at our home now. They led Camille and Pugh out in handcuffs. Gordon watched them go, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. In the hallway, several other residents had emerged to watch the spectacle. Among them, Gordon noticed an elderly woman who lived on Q's floor, a Mrs. Rhodes whom Wayne had interviewed during the investigation. She caught Gordon's eye and gave him a small nod of approval. Chapter 8, The Aftermath. The trial took 8 months to prepare. During that time, Gordon's life became a carefully managed routine, running Quinn Construction, taking care of Sophie, and working with prosecutors to build an airtight case. Sophie had been confused at first when Mommy didn't come home. Gordon had sat her down with a child psychologist present and explained in age-appropriate terms that Mommy had done some very bad things and had to go away. "Will she come back?" Sophie had asked her gray eyes. Gordon's eyes worried. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe someday, but you and we're going to be okay. I promise." And they were. Gordon hired a nanny, Naomi Delaney, a warm woman in her 40s who'd raised 3 kids of her own. She helped Sophie adjust, helped Gordon adjust, and slowly their house became a home again instead of a crime scene. The evidence against the conspirators was overwhelming. The recordings from Pugh's condo alone would have been enough, but Gordon and Wayne had built a case that left no room for doubt. Exhibit A, the falsified paternity test, along with a real one showing Sophie was Gordon's biological daughter. Exhibit B, the forged medical records documenting fake complications from Gordon's vasectomy. Exhibit C, financial records showing the Shell Corporation, the money laundering, and the planned fraud. Exhibit D, text messages between Camille and Pugh discussing the plan and when will it be done. Exhibit E, Julia Morrison's testimony about Pugh's history of medical fraud and her ex-husband's pattern of elaborate revenge schemes. Exhibit F, the recordings from the condo, including the chilling discussion of arranging Gordon's accident. Gordon sat in the courtroom every day of the trial, watching as each piece of evidence was presented. He watched Camille's defense attorney try to paint her as a victim of Pugh's manipulation, a narrative that fell apart when prosecutors showed texts where Camille had suggested specific ways to kill Gordon. He watched Pugh's attorney try to claim the medical records were legitimate and Gordon was conducting a witch hunt, a defense that crumbled when expert witnesses testified about the falsified documents. And he watched Melody Kaufman, who'd taken a plea deal in exchange for testimony. She'd been the first to break the weak link Gordon had predicted. She'd explained in detail how she'd set up the financial infrastructure, how she'd known about the plan to kill Gordon, but it justified it to herself as just helping my sister. "Did you know they planned to kill Gordon, Quinn?" the prosecutor asked her. Melody's voice was barely audible. "Yes." "And did you do anything to stop it?" "No." On the witness stand, Gordon told a story. The overheard conversation during surgery, his investigation, the moment he realized his entire marriage was a lie. His voice never wavered. His eyes never left the jury. "Did you love your wife?" the defense attorney asked during cross-examination. "I loved who I thought she was," Gordon replied. "I didn't love the con artist who saw me as a mark." The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Victor Pugh guilty on all counts. Sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, medical license permanently revoked, and ordered to pay restitution to Gordon and to other victims of his medical fraud. Camille Quinn, guilty on all counts, sentenced to 18 years with eligibility for parole after 12 if she showed genuine remorse. Melody Kaufman guilty, but her plea deal and cooperation meant she received 8 years with 3 already served and possibility of parole in 18 months. Gordon sat next to Wayne in the courtroom as the verdicts were read. Camille turned to look at him one final time before they led her away. Her eyes held no remorse, only fury that she'd been caught. Gordon felt nothing but peace. Chapter 9. New Foundations. 1 year after the trial, Gordon Quinn stood in his backyard watching Sophie play on a new swing set. She was 7 now, thriving despite everything. She asked about Camille sometimes, and Gordon answered honestly. Age-appropriately, but honestly. "Do you miss Mommy?" she'd asked last week. "I miss who I thought she was," Gordon had replied. "But I'm glad every day that I have you." "I'm glad too, Daddy." Naomi Delaney had become more than a nanny. She'd become family. She and Sophie had bonded deeply. And Gordon had found himself looking forward to mornings when Naomi arrived with coffee and her steady presence. Quinn Construction had expanded. Without the financial drain of Camille's secret accounts and Melody's embezzlement, the company was more profitable than ever. Gordon had hired 3 new project managers and taken on 2 major municipal contracts. But the best moment came 3 months after the trial when Gordon officially adopted Sophie. The judge, a stern woman named Beverly Flowers, had reviewed the case thoroughly. She'd read about the fake paternity test, about Camille's betrayal, about Gordon's fight to prove Sophie was his biological daughter. "Mr. Quinn," Judge Flowers had said, this court finds that you are indeed Sophie's biological father and that the paternity test presented by the defendants was fraudulent and malicious. However, I understand you're seeking to officially adopt your own daughter. Can you explain why? Gordon had stood Sophie's hand in his. Your Honor, for 5 years, I loved Sophie as my daughter without ever questioning it. Then for a few horrible weeks, I believed she might not be mine. The biology matters. I'm grateful she is mine biologically. But what matters more is this. Even if she wasn't, I'd still be standing here asking to be your father because that's what I am. That's what I've always been. And I want it formalized in a way that no one can ever question again. Judge Flowers had smiled. Rare for her. Adoption granted. Mr. Quinn, you're officially Sophie's father in every possible way. Congratulations. They'd celebrated with ice cream and a trip to the zoo. Simple pleasures, honest pleasures. Wayne Riddle came by the house at least twice a week, usually bringing takeout and staying for dinner. He'd become Uncle Wayne to Sophie and Gordon's most trusted friend. They never talked about the case anymore unless it was necessary for the civil suit. Gordon was suing Pugh, Camille, and Melody for damages, and the settlement would likely fund Sophie's college education entirely. You ever think about dating again? Wayne asked one evening watching Gordon flip burgers on the grill. Maybe someday, not now. Sophie needs stability. And honestly, I need to remember what it feels like to trust someone. Gordon plated the burgers. But I'm not opposed to it eventually. When I'm ready. Good. Because Naomi asked me if you were seeing anyone. Gordon looked up sharply. She did. Wayne grinned. Relax. She was asking for a friend, apparently. But I thought you should know she's paying attention. Gordon considered that found he wasn't opposed to it. Naomi was kind, smart, and genuinely cared for Sophie, but it was too soon. They'd been through too much. Tell her friend I'm flattered, but focusing on being a dad right now. Will do. That night, after Sophie was in bed, Gordon sat in his home office and pulled out a journal. He'd been documenting everything since the trial. Not for legal reasons, but for himself. Processing the betrayal, the anger, the eventual acceptance, he wrote. Today was a good day. Sophie lost her first tooth. Naomi made her favorite cookies. The business is strong. I am strong. What Camille and Victor try to do to me, try to make me, it didn't work. They wanted me broken, dead, or in prison. Instead, I'm free. My daughter is safe. Justice was served. I've learned that strength isn't about never being betrayed. It's about what you do when someone tries to destroy you. It's about fighting smart, not just hard. It's about building something better from the ashes. Quinn Construction will survive me. Sophie will grow up knowing her father fought for her, protected her, loved her. That's the legacy that matters. He closed the journal and looked at the photo on his desk. Him and Sophie at the zoo, both grinning, ice cream on her nose. Real, honest. True. Gordon Quinn had been targeted, betrayed, and nearly destroyed. But he'd fought back with intelligence, patience, and determination. He'd protected what mattered, punished those who had wronged him, and built a better life from the ruins of his marriage. The envelope he'd overheard Victor Pugh discussing had been meant to destroy him. Instead, it had been the first thread that unraveled his enemies completely. And Gordon? He'd never been stronger. Epilogue. 5 years later, Gordon received a letter. It was from Camille, sent from the women's correctional facility where she was serving her sentence. He almost threw it away unopened. But curiosity won. Gordon, I'm not writing to apologize. We both know I'm not sorry. I'm sorry I got caught, but I'm not sorry I tried. You're always too good, too honest, too naive. You deserve what we planned for you. But I'm writing to tell you something you should know. Sophie asks about me. I get letters from her teacher saying she talks about missing her mother. You might think you've won, but you've deprived my daughter of her mother. That's on you. One day when she's old enough to understand, she'll hate you for keeping us apart. She'll realize you destroyed her family. And that will be my revenge, knowing that eventually you'll lose her, too. See, Gordon read the letter once, then fed it through his office shredder. Sophie, now 12, had stopped asking about Camille years ago. She had Naomi, who'd officially become Mrs. Quinn 2 years ago in a small backyard ceremony. She had her father, her Uncle Wayne, her friends, her school. She had a real family. That evening, Sophie burst into his office, excited about the science project she'd won first place for. Gordon pulled her into a hug and she laughed. That pure, genuine laugh of a child who felt safe and loved. Dad, you're squishing me. Sorry, kiddo. Just really proud of you. I know you always are. She kissed his cheek and ran off to show Naomi her blue ribbon. Gordon looked at the shredded letter in his trash can, then at his daughter disappearing down the hallway and smiled. Camille was wrong. She lost everything. Her freedom, her daughter, her future. She could send bitter letters from prison, but it didn't change reality. Gordon Quinn had won completely, finally forever, and he'd earned every moment of that victory.